So I thought, that's the bad news. The good news is, okay, now we know two really important things. There really is a problem that we could be focusing on, and probably should be focusing on. Depends on your definition of professionalism. But as if we want to consider ourselves professionals as teachers, we should have the same aspirations that lawyer professionals have, which is to do good. Not just for our client, but for society overall, and for the system. And our clients are our students, and ultimately the clients that they're going to have. So, great. Factoid number one, we do have a problem. Factoid number two, law students are not bringing it with them to law school, or if they do, it's to a very small extent. Factoid number three, we know the human factors involved that are contributing to this problem. Three very important things to know. And then the question becomes, how do we, and are we willing to start to think about these factors as law teachers, law deans, lawyers, bar leaders on the national, state, and local levels, and start to educate law students and lawyers so they understand. A, there is a problem. Maybe you don't have it, but you've seen somebody in your class that does, or someone in your firm that does, or someone in your agency that does. There is a problem. Here's what the causes are likely to be, and if that person knows about it, they can make choices and fix the problem and get back to life is great, I love my work, and I'm so glad I'm here doing it, and carry that forward to their clients and their working environment and take it home to their family when they go home at night. So to my mind, it's a lot of good news. I think deans naturally are, a little afraid of it, and no wonder, because it casts what seems like a negative light on our law schools. But, did we really think we were perfect? I don't think so. I mean, do the med school teachers think they're perfect? No. If we go home, do we think we're great parents? No. Hardly anybody thinks they're a great parent. Everyone thinks they're failing as a parent. And to a large extent, we are. Look at our kids, right? You can list off the reasons. Nonetheless, we're fine. We're just human beings. We get to not be perfect. And part of the joy of this is you get to not be perfect, and you get to learn, grow, and improve. That's one of those intrinsic values. Do you want to do that? And the people that want to do that are pretty happy. So a lot of times people ask me, well, how come you're not depressed? You study this stuff. And I say, I don't know why, but I'm glad I'm not. And as I'm thinking this through, this is why. Because if we want to pretend there aren't any problems in the world, don't become a lawyer. Right? We deal with problems. So no, let's say, okay, we all got problems. Now let's figure out, using our intelligence, what are they and what's causing them, and so how do we fix them? And I think we're partway there now. I don't want to put too much on this research because it's just a couple pilot studies. We've since done another very similar survey at a law school just on a consulting basis. Same exact findings, And one of the really good things that's coming out of our last study is Ken inserted into the study a really aggressive dynamic piece, which actually ended up getting us in the #2 psych journal in the country, the one I never thought we'd get there. But he inserted a very intensive sequential path model test for what is causing what in this sequence of psychological events between the teaching context at the law school, how the students perceive the attitudes of the professors, basically, which is called autonomy support, would also apply to how children perceive the attitudes of their parents, or how employees perceive the attitude of their employers, or football players' attitude of the coach. If the person in power provides autonomy support, which is one of the needs, those 5 needs I mentioned, autonomy, a sense of self, getting back to the old self-esteem idea. We inserted this test, a sequential test, into the last 3 schools that we studied, testing not only the needs, the values, the motives, and the well-being, and their career choices, all the things, but also how do you perceive the learning environment here and the attitudes of the faculty overall. And with the idea that there was already some research in lower school environments and in industrial and business environments where the degree of autonomy support actually causes or creates everything else. And there are mathematical ways of actually testing causation now if it's tight enough. Again, using this individual subject tracking, not just, oh, everybody's feeling good or not good, but Miss A, Miss B, Miss C, down through triple Z, and what happened to each of them, depending on all these other things. And what we found was that that sequential path indeed also applies very tightly in all the law schools we've tested in now, 3 very different law schools. So that the teacher attitudes, which is something that we can teach teachers, what the constructive and destructive attitudes are from a learning and motivation perspective. Whatever the teacher attitudes were that are shared at that law school will determine, pretty much absolutely according to this research, what the level of need satisfaction is for those students. And the level of need satisfaction, which is that autonomy need for a sense of self, authenticity, which is they call part of autonomy, but I break it out because it's so important. The authenticity need is part of autonomy, not just that you have a sense of self, but that you're true to it, that what you say is what you believe, what you do reflects who you are, so you don't violate yourself. So that's autonomy and authenticity. Then there's a relatedness need, that we have to relate well with a number of different kinds of people in a meaningful way, with real intimacy, a sense of genuine understanding and listening and sharing, honesty, in other words. So autonomy, authenticity, the relatedness need, and then competence, that you feel competent to do the tasks in your life and your work. All those things are crashing at law schools, sorry to say. But what we found in this last study that got us in the real high-end journal was that all depended very directly and very predictably on faculty attitudes toward the students, plain and simple. It's like a hand, one watering down here at the root. Whatever is creating the learning environment waters all these 5 fingers of the hand: autonomy, authenticity, relatedness, competence. There's also a security need, and self-esteem we also studied, and they all follow. And then, depending on that level of need satisfaction, there are 3 main outcomes here that those cause or predict. One is grade point average and passage of the bar exam, which is the same thing that's been found in industrial settings. People who get autonomy support and have their psychological needs met perform way better. It's a huge economics principle. Even to the extent there's a book now by 2 Swiss economists called Economics and Happiness. And it's all about these intrinsic motivations and intrinsic values and how they feed profit